Hello and welcome to Brain Addicts. Today we're going to be discussing the life cycle of the average star. But before we can begin, we must discuss a couple of key terms. First of all, nuclear fusion. This talks about every type of fusion, more specifically. But nuclear fusion is defined as when two or more nuclei fuse together and form one nucleus with a higher atomic number. This lets off energy, and this is very general in the way that it just describes a bunch of other types of fusion. One very specific example is hydrogen fusion. This is when two hydrogen nuclei fuse together to form helium. And another very specific example of nuclear fusion is helium fusion. This is when two or more helium nuclei collide and fuse together to form carbon, iron, etc. Now that that's out of the way, let's get started with the life cycle. The first stage of a star is the nebula. The nebula is a giant cloud of elements such as iron and hydrogen. Eventually, gravity will condense all this and make it into a star. At the core, we undergo fusion. This is where hydrogen is turned into helium. And since energy is being let off, it keeps gravity from making it collapse on itself. And because this helium is much heavier and more dense than hydrogen, it pushes the hydrogen out to the surface. That is why the sun's surface is hydrogen. And even though gravity tries to make the sun collapse, the energy coming out from the sun is too great because of its nuclear fusion. And this stops the sun from collapsing. But eventually the sun runs out of hydrogen. And since helium fusion, it is unable to happen because it is not hot enough. And what will happen is, because there's nothing stopping gravity, it will make the sun collapse for the first time. And once it gets to a certain point, the sun will actually get so hot it can start fusing helium. And what will happen as a result? It will grow. So the sun will be much bigger because of the heavier and more dense elements. And it will just grow and grow and grow. And eventually, the sun will get so big, it will collapse under its own weight. And eventually, we will end up with two different things. The planetary nebula, which you can see right here, and the white dwarf. Yes, this is supposed to be white, but would not show up here to save my life. And basically, the planetary nebula is the outer layers of the red giant. Because it collapsed, a bunch of the sun was lost, leaving only the core, or the white dwarf. And the white dwarf here is very, very hot. It is hotter, actually, than the sun itself in its former state. And eventually, once all the heat is used up in the white dwarf, after about approximately 13.8 billion years, it will turn into a black dwarf. And a black dwarf is basically a dead star. It has no heat. It just sits there. This is the proper definition of a dead star. However, this life cycle, what you'll see here, is much, 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 much different than a massive star. That is why it is very important to say this is the life cycle of an average star. So if you would like us to make a video about the life cycle of the massive star, then leave a like down below and subscribe and comment what else you would like to see. I'm Brain Addicts. Have a nice day.